Well done. You're going to need that singing voice a little later on because we have to sing part of today's message. I'm so glad that you came out, and thank you to those of you who were here last night as well. Who was here last night? Wow, that's beautiful. And I see a whole cohort of some of the musicians over there. A wonderful job by the musicians. Thank you so much. And as you heard, today we're celebrating the birth not only of Suzanne Sackett, but of Jesus of Nazareth, especially for the impact his life and teaching has had on the world. And I mentioned that I want to tell you the story of a great Christian saint who followed the example set by Jesus of Nazareth. And that example is the one of loving the poor. And that was a hallmark of Jesus' message, to love the poor. He loved the poor. He loved the marginalized people. He loved the outcasts. And he asked his followers to do the same thing. And that's what the story of our saint today is all about him following the example to love the poor. The story takes place on the day after Christmas. That's tomorrow, which is St. Stephen's Day, which in itself is significant, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And there is a 129-year-old hymn that tells the story. It's a Christmas carol, and itself borrows the melody from an even more ancient springtime melody. It's a very, very old tradition, and we'll sing it later on today. And it's a song about a good king who goes out into the icy cold of night in the dead of winter to help the poor. And this good king's name is Wenceslas. Now, King Wenceslas was actually the Duke of Bohemia. He lived till about 900 before our common era. And in his time, he wasn't a king. He was the Duke. But he was so revered so much for the good work that he did among the poor of the world, that he was elevated to the title of king posthumously. After he died, they said he was our king. Yeah. He was a Christian thanks to his devout grandmother. His grandmother raised him to be charitable and kind to others. And later she became a saint herself. She became Saint Ludmilla of Bohemia. Now, what was remarkable about her is that she raised her grandson to be a Christian in a land that in the early 10th century was still largely pagan, where it was sometimes very dangerous to be a Christian. Now, that alone was significant, but even more importantly is that she raised him to understand that Christianity wasn't merely his religion, it was a way of life. She taught him that being a Christian was a duty to others, to help others. And it was something that made an impression upon him for his entire life. So when Wenceslas saw suffering, thanks to his grandmother and the teaching of Jesus through her, he didn't just stand by and watch. He did something. He got involved. He helped. Now, that would be a great story all by itself. It's an excellent story. But wait. We've still got to meet Wenceslas's mother. She didn't share that passion for Christianity and kindness and sharing and all that stuff. That was not on her agenda. She had other plans. And her plan involved turning the kingdom exactly away from Christianity and back to the old ways, as she thought. And she couldn't see a way around doing it other than to have Wenceslas's grandmother killed. She did it when Wenceslas was too young to take the throne, so that she, as the parent, could be the regent and rule in his place. And she did. Her name was Drahomira, and she was a harsh and unpopular ruler, and she did all of these terrible things, atrocities, some of them, in his name. She persecuted Christians on purpose, and she allowed priests to be murdered by turning a blind eye to it. Yet none of this could erase the message that Wenceslas's grandmother had instilled in his heart. If anything, it made him even more resolute to do something to help, to bring the Christian message of charity and compassion alive into the world, and to try and undo some of the damage that his mother had done. So when eventually he did ascend to the throne and became the Duke of Bohemia, at 20 years of age, he started to make some drastic changes. He made it safe again for Christians to roam about freely. He showed love and compassion for the people in a way it had just not been done before. He built churches, and it is said that he even used his own wealth to go about even to neighboring countries and purchase children who had been taken as slaves and set them free. And he built churches to be centers of education. And legend has it that he would get up nightly in the wintry cold of Bohemia and walk about the streets barefoot to give charity and food to the poor and suffering. Oh, the people loved him. They loved him. But not everybody loved him. Oh, no. Some people had become quite wealthy under his mother's reign, and all of this Christian generosity and education and compassion was upsetting things. So they had to have him assassinated. Yep, they killed him. Right on the steps of one of the very churches he was built. And do you know that he was considered to be so pious and so good and so just by the people and by the church of the time that it is said that he became sainted immediately upon his death? Not only that, but stories about him started to circulate all around Europe. 4 biographies rose up around him, which in that time is unprecedented. And all of them told the story of this new concept of a just ruler, a just king, whose power comes not from might, but from piety and goodness. Now, the carol that we'll sing today about him tells the story about his love for the poor people and how he would go the extra mile for others. Like I said, it happens in a wintry scene, the day after Christmas, St. Stephen's Day. And it's freezing and it's cold and the wind has a chill factor. And he's outside, barefoot with his page, and he sees a poor man out there gathering wood, and he says to his page, "Who is that?" And upon hearing who it is and how far the man had to travel to get the fuel, he says to the page, "Get some food and some wine. We're going to take him some dinner tonight." So we should sing the carol for the scene, to set the scene, don't you think? All right, let's set the scene. Now, this carol has got boys' parts and girls' parts. Okay? So but you have to pay attention, because right in the middle, it flips. Just when you think it's your part, it's not. All right? You've been warned.
Good King Wenceslas looked out on the feast of Stephen, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Brightly shone the moon that night, though the frost was cruel, when a poor man came in sight, gathering winter fuel. Hither, page, and stand by me, if thou know'st it telling, yonder peasant, who is he, where and what his dwelling? Sire, he lives a goodly kens underneath the mountain, right against the forest fence, by St. Agnes' fountain. Bring me flesh and bring me wine, bring me pine logs hither. You and I will see him dine when we bear them thither. Page and monarch forth they went together. Through the rude wind's wild lament and the bitter weather. Sire, the night is darker now, and the wind blows stronger. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer. Mark my footsteps, my good page, tread them in them boldly. You shall find the winter's rage freeze thy blood less coldly. In his master's steps he trod, where the snow lay dented. Heat was in the very sod which the saint had printed. Therefore everyone be sure, wealth or rank possessing, you who now will bless the poor shall yourselves find blessing.
Oh, it's very good. I think you found your choir for next year. That's remarkable, beautiful. So I love that line in the carol where the page sings, it's getting cold out there. And he says, fails my heart. I know not how, I can no longer. Oh, I get that. I mean, it reminds me of those times in my life when things just seem so overwhelming and my courage seems like it's going to fail. And I just don't know how I'm going to get through it. Has anybody ever identified with that? Like kind of sometimes even today, a little bit. And the response of the good king is so inspiring. He says, mark my footsteps, my good page, and tread thou in them boldly. Pay attention to my footprints in the snow. Look at them and step into them confidently, and you will find that the winter's rage freezes you less coldly. In other words, he put himself in front of the servant to shield him from the icy wind, which is exactly opposite to how it should be. The servant was supposed to go ahead of the sovereign, not the other way. So the king put rank aside, as the end of the carol says, because he knew that in the presence of suffering, kindness to and solidarity with another human being has the power to impart amazing strength and courage. And then the song tells of the miracle of compassion. Heat was in the very sod which the saint had printed. That's the miracle of loving kindness, that it brings warmth to where before there was only bitter cold. It's something worth thinking about at Christmas time, that we have the power to bring hope and courage through the warmth of our caring and sharing, which is exactly what Jesus taught us. It's also what we sang about last night, isn't it? Ubi caritas et amor Deus ibi est. Who remembers what that means? Where love and charity is, that's where God is. Now, this Christian sentiment is also captured in a very famous Christian prayer that affirms this. Let me be the one, rather, to give consolation, like the king, instead of looking for it, instead of seeking understanding. Let me put rank aside for a moment. Let me turn things around enough so that I can be the one to bring love and peace and joy and light into the world. Now, I'm talking about another saint. Which one? Francis. We should read his prayer together. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And since today we are talking about Christian saints, we ought to address the Feast of Stephen too, right? So from the carol, it takes place December 26th. That's tomorrow. It's the Feast of Stephen, one of the most loved saints of Christendom. Because who do you think he put first? Others, particularly the poor. He loved the poor like his teacher taught him. He was particularly good to widows who had a really rough time in those years. And also because he was the very first Christian martyr. What was inspiring about his life was not only how passionate he was about the Christian message, but also about how he died. You see, he too was killed for being a Christian. He was stoned to death. And as they dragged him outside the city of Jerusalem and stoned him to death, what do you think the prayer on his lips was? To ask God to not punish those who were killing him in that moment. The first Christian martyr. So today, on Christmas Day, I'm thinking about all of this. I'm thinking about the power of a grandmother's love. I'm thinking about the power of Wenceslas's compassion. I'm thinking about the power of Stephen's forgiveness. I'm thinking about the power of the Christian message of love. I'm thinking also that Christmas and its opportunity doesn't start and end today. There's tomorrow, on the Feast of Stephen, another opportunity, and the day after that, and the day after that. But for today, I think I'm going to think of St. Stephen all day, and I'm going to think of St. Wenceslas, but I'm also going to think of all of the other saints in my life who have cared about me when I was poor in spirit. Today, I will remember to be inspired by the lives of those who put other people first, so that suffering may be reduced in the world. People like Wenceslas and Stephen, but also like St. Veronica, St. Simon, Mother Teresa, St. Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and also all of the other everyday, not so famous people, like our grandmothers, like our uncles, like our neighbors, like our children, like our friends, like many people whose names may never be known with 4 biographies, but whose kindness stays alive in our hearts through how we express it in the world. And most importantly, today, I'm remembering that so much of this has its origin in the heart and teaching of Jesus of Nazareth. I invite you now to take a breath in with me and to sigh, letting your eyes close as we share in a moment of prayer together. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Let us take a moment in silent contemplation to consider these words. In this quiet contemplation, I invite you to bring into your awareness those people in your lives who have stood for you as an example, a role model of kindness, and who have contributed to your life, bringing courage to you in moments when you couldn't do it for yourself. And feeling gratitude for them and for all those who have gone before us, who have made it possible for us to be here, we celebrate. We give thanks, and we rededicate ourselves to paying tribute to their lives and message. And together we say, and so it is.